So today we are with Anthony Guevara. He's a 21 years old full-time college student majoring in Latin American Studies with a minor in Latinx Studies and a content creator from Northern Virginia. So again, Anthony, thank you so much for having you here. It's honestly a pleasure and honor. So welcome to Central American Voices.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on here. I've heard your podcast a lot, actually.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Ya me voy a poner toda
Yeah,
rojita.
especially no, especially like preparing because like I've listened to your podcast before, but like I listened to the one with Danny recently because I
Oh,
just
okay.
met Dan. I met Danny for the first time. We went to a
Hmm.
concert together,
Oh, that's cool.
so that was nice. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Thank you for, kind of supporting on that. Thank you. It's honestly like a whole full circle because I have followed him already, like a lot of his platforms. So I'm just like, kind of hear that from you, kind of made me flush a little bit. um, so I wanted to start a little bit. So, how was your experience growing up as Central American? I know you grew up in Virginia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how was your like experience growing up there?
So I have the privilege of going around an area that was like extremely Central American. Like I can't even explain it. Like I like to say like the funny thing about I grew up in Springfield, Virginia, which is in Northern Virginia,
Hmm.
which is like in the DMV, not the Department of Motor Vehicles. But I always say like, oh, like anywhere you turn, you'll find like a Honduran restaurant, a Salvadoran restaurant, so it's like it's really nice. I That's why I tend to go back a lot from my college town because it's very much there's no Central Americans. I mean, there are
Hmm.
Central Americans, of course, but it's not like where you can turn and see one at every corner like it is like in my hometown.
Hmm.
But that's how it is in like Northern Virginia. There's not only Central Americans though. There's definitely like a lot of South Americans. Like I would say like the predominant groups are like Salvadoreños, Hondureños, Peruanos, Bolivianos, a lot of Colombians, and groups like that. But yeah.
That's pretty cool. I have heard a lot about the DMV, and I need to go visit because every time I have someone that like I'm from the DMV and there's a lot of Central America, I'm like, how cool is that? Here in LA, like
Yeah.
we only have a small little community, but that's so
No, yeah, and
cool.
yeah, I lived like all over Northern Virginia. Like I've lived predominantly in like Springfield and Woodridge, but I lived
Hmm.
in like Alexandria Falls Church and like honestly like the first groups of like Caribbean or like Mexican Latinos that I've met like and like became friends with that wasn't online was at school. And then
Oh,
there and then
really?
I would talk to them and they were like, yeah, there were no Central Americans where I'm from, which is like crazy to hear because I grew up somewhere where like the whole school was basically Central American.
Wow. And then here in the other
Yeah.
side of the country is like I can count in my high school like 500s, and I was one of them. So like other four.
No,
It's
yeah.
like very small Central American. Like
Mhm,
it's not small because it's LA, but it's just that because the
mhm.
predominant is like Mexican. So like there's a lot of us that maybe they're not willing to, of course, come out and be like, oh, I'm Central American, just because of kind of like how the growing up here, kind of how it is.
No, yeah, and I've seen it firsthand because I've seen people that are like from my town, like, and go to my school, and they don't mention that they're Central American. And I'm like, this would be like such a weird thing to do back home. I'm like, why are you doing it here? Like, this is where you should be like saying you're Central American, and
Hmm.
especially like when you find a Central American in a town like Charlottesville, because like Charlottesville is very much like they're of course they're liberal, more liberal, but
Uh-huh.
very much still a white town. So anytime like that you find a Central American, it's always nice. Like I remember like my favorite restaurant is like a Mexican restaurant, but
Hmm.
the co-owner is like Hondureña. So most of
Okay.
the like a lot like a lot of the food on the menu is like Honduran food. And I remember one time like she heard me speaking Spanish with
Hmm.
I forgot who I was with. I was with a friend. And she was like, "Oh, so Hondureño." And I was like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" And she was like, "Because I'm Honduran." I was like, "You're Honduran?" I was like, but then when I saw the pollo chuco on the menu, I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Somebody here has to be Honduran."
Yes, somebody. Yes, and I always tell people, like when I find it, like in Honduran or even any Central American, like I have found like a lot of Nicaraguenses like in Los Angeles. It's always like, "Oh, are
Mm.
you from Central America?" And they're like, "Yeah, where are you from?" We're like, "Ah!" It's like instant kind of click, like
Yeah,
instant best friend
yeah.
moment. It's like, oh my, like you cannot understand me. We understand each other. We okay, and it's like it's kind of funny because not funny, but funny at the same time because here in LA, and you probably I don't know if you have visited LA before, but because of the huge influence of like Mexican, sometimes, and I include myself, we have to kind of limit ourselves on certain words because some people might not understand it. We have had, people who have made fun of us, kind of like making fun of our words. Why are you saying both? Why are you saying chumpa? Like stuff like that. Like that happened to me throughout so many times. So sometimes when we're talking to others, we limit ourselves. So once we talk with our Central America, it's like the instant, like kind of like click that we just switch. It's like, okay, you don't have to
Yeah,
pretend. It's not with pretending. It's just we kind of like, I don't want to kind of say like, oh, mahe, and then people are going to tell them that they're stupid.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
I definitely had that experience because when I talked to like my roommates, like two of them were Mexican. When I talked to them, I had to pronounce every single S, and I hate pronouncing the S's.
Ah.
Like I had to be like, oh, like escuela instead of escuela, or like nosotros and like en vez de nosotros. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's not how I talk. So I would have to talk in a very like neutral way. Um, and like obviously we're gonna talk about like Museo
Yeah.
later, but like even when I talk to my friends, anytime I say like cállate en vez de
Hmm.
cállate, they kind of like raise an eyebrow. They're like, what? So I definitely have to like change the way I talk around like different people
Yeah, and something funny that I didn't know I skipped my S's until someone told me, "Hey, you don't
until they
fuck with your
pointed it
S."
out, right?
Yeah, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Excuse
I'm
me?"
like, no, and I'm like, I do pronounce my S. It just sounds different. I'm like, it just sounds
Yeah.
different. Like it's there.
Or
But
like,
yeah,
you're
it's
like, "Hey." I don't know, like it's just I
like
never
you're like,
noticed it.
yeah, it's instead of yes, sometimes I'm like, hey. I'm like, hey, and then they're like, but I
Yes.
have that experience, especially with like even like with like English words where
Mhm.
like because I don't remember how old you were when you came, but like were you in Esau?
I was 14 when I came. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
like
yeah, but
I
I was in
was
ESL.
yeah, so we call it Esau. It's like I don't know why there's an O. But where I'm from, we call it Esau. And like you can tell when someone has been in Esau because of the way they pronounce like specific words. And like you kind of are like, were you in Esau? We were like, yeah. Cause like for the word pizza, I get corrected on that every time I say it. And they're like, it's not pizza, it's pizza. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right to me. Like it just
Okay, no, like
like
okay. I get what you're saying. No,
yeah.
oh, here because I honestly my experience with like ESL, which ESL for you was a horrible experience. Like is that it's a
It was
horrible
horrible.
experience. It's a horrible,
No,
like
yeah, it
I
was horrible.
personally I have shared like story here where I'm like that is the place where I experienced the most racism, and everyone there is talked Spanish, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Like what
No,
is going
yeah.
on inside this class?
No, during Esau, like we would get like we wouldn't get like punished for speaking Spanish, but we would be like so scolded for speaking Spanish, or like
What?
we would just be like, you can't talk like have you ever watched the movie like Walkout? Like
Mm, no.
it's like a movie about like the Chicano movement, and then like it was like that except we didn't get hit. Like they would like scream at us if we spoke
What?
Spanish. Yeah, and the thing is like we were like children. We were like 6 7 years old. They would be like, you're never going to learn English if you don't stop speaking Spanish. And we were like, oh, okay. So then
Okay.
that's why a lot of
Wow.
kids like they lose their like if they don't speak Spanish at home, they like lose their Spanish, which is like
Yeah.
really sad, but
It is really sad, and honestly, like I feel like it's a lot of with ESL. I have ESL. It's just something that I this whole system needs to be like check on there because I never had
yeah.
an actual teacher. It all were substitutes, and I remember. So just imagine Alejandra, 14 years old, just arrived from Honduras. Like 2 weeks here, llega y le ponen un examen. Honey, I don't know how to
And he
talk. I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to speak it. I don't know how to read. Like what is going on?
yeah.
And then I got
No,
failed, and they were like, they put you on the I don't know the states like test, and I'm like, how do you want me to
yeah.
pass or like show you that I can, you know? understand it if I just honestly arrived. Like it's the whole thing.
No, yeah, and I was grateful because my mom was learning English around the same time that
Mhm.
I was.
Okay.
Because when my mom was like starting like work, I was like 6, 7. My mom was starting work, so like she had to like learn English for work. So I don't know.
Mhm.
I wish I had a picture, but there's like this book. It was like with videos in it, and it's like the skyline of New York City. It's
Mhm.
like a English learning book, and we
Oh,
would
ese
like
es
watch those videos together.
Inglés sin barreras. I think it's that one. I think it's
Um,
Inglés sin
I don't
barreras.
know, but I think it might be that one,
Yeah,
yeah.
because they show it in the
And
TV and like aprende inglés and it
yeah,
has like
yeah,
this
yeah,
yellow.
yeah,
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 I
yeah,
think it's
yeah.
Inglés sin barreras.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we would watch that, and it came with, like, a book and everything, um but yeah, definitely like you like have those shared experiences. And that's why I like appreciate going around somewhere like that because there was like kids who like there was like all kinds of like Central American
Mhm,
kids. There was like kids who like didn't speak any Spanish, only spoke English. There was
mhm,
like recent arrivals, and then there was like people like me who were kind of like didn't like speak the best English, but like we're still like born here.
mhm.
So there was definitely like an array of like different kinds of people.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to talk kind of like just transition to like your platform a little bit. I know you have a platform like in TikTok and then on Instagram, but I kind of want to focus more on your TikTok. So how was your decision to starting like creating educational content about Central American and like Latin American? Like what was like, okay, hey, like let me start like here in TikTok that a lot of people just like to dance. Let me teach a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, so when I first started, my platform was like all over the place. I mean, it still is all over the place. I pride myself on not having like a
I love it though.
specific thing that I post about. But it used to be just like funny videos and like yeah, I would talk about like Latino stuff, but like I felt that it was very much like for lack of better words, like BuzzFeed Latino kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
I just didn't like that because I was seeing like a lot of like non-Central Americans making videos on Central America where I would just be like, that's not right. I'm like, that's not true. And
Made me cringe a little bit.
it wasn't like horrible stuff, but it was
Mhm,
just like, oh, like I feel like someone like si era hondureña, like
mhm,
she would know better, you know? So I started making like videos about like Central America, and it wasn't like planned videos like I do now. Like it was like, for example, like last year when I went to Honduras, I just like filmed all the stuff I was doing in Honduras.
mhm,
Like and then those videos, like people were like, "Oh, we want to know more about Honduras." So I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I definitely think that like me changing my major to Latin American studies and my minor to Latinx studies helped like transition me a lot because I used to be a business student. Like I got into
mhm,
the business school at my school that's like really
mhm,
hard to get into. I
mhm.
mostly did it to prove it to others that I could, but then I'd like dropped out because I was like, I hate it. Like I hate it. Like I don't want to do business. Like I mean, I want to do
Mhm.
business, but like I feel like you can go into business doing anything in your undergrad.
Anything,
So I
yes.
definitely started. Yeah, and then I also wanted to get like I just saw so much like misinformation that I was just like somebody has to like something
Mhm,
because it was like a lot of people like not acknowledging privileges that they had, like people like supporting the idea of like Latinidad, like we're all Latino with like which like ignores so many groups and stuff like that.
yeah,
A lot of people calling like Latino like and Hispanic a race. It was just like so much that I was just like, somebody has to do this because all the people that like I was like mutuals with on TikTok, like I
mhm,
love them, but like they don't make that kind of content. They kind of like make content that is comfortable for people, and I feel like that's definitely needed because like I feel like it shouldn't always be like sad information, bad information,
yeah,
like blah blah blah. Like you need to correct yourself. Like of course people need to laugh, but I feel like there should be a time where like people are uncomfortable that are kind of like
mhm.
faced and make them question like where they stand within like the Latino community.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of your content, like, I mean, I have then I mean it's nice that you kind of share that because even here in that podcast, like I can talk about any other project, but I feel like within the Latino community, we have to question ourselves because no one is questioning us. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
when are we
Mhm.
getting a check? Yo siempre digo acá, like, we have to check on ourselves. We have to kind of like reevaluate. We have to evaluate ourselves. Like, are we creating, in this case, content just to appeal certain areas, or are we going to be here to, like, hey, here, yes, we are Latinos, but we also need to see what we're doing bad and what we're doing, good. Like, and also, like, especially here in the United States, we talk a lot of, inclusivity and stuff like that. And like you said, like, a lot of people were like, oh, I can include los Latinos, like this specific group, but what about the rest? Like, what about the
Yeah.
rest? And like, and I tend to, like, well, like, we're going to talk about inclusivity, we should like start with like those conversations that make us uncomfortable, because it's sad sometimes, because it's so ingrained of us, right? So ingrained of, like, the way we grew up, the way we kind of like was in school, how we were taught and all the stuff. But then we need to realize that certain aspect and certain type of mentality, we should like limit, like you said, like saying Hispanic Latino. And then I was just like recently going back on all your texts. I was like, let me go like go down a little bit. And I was like, it's true. Like, I know you have a video about like talking about, you know, calling Hispanic and an ethnic. I think it was an ethnic, or it was a race. I think it was
Like an
something like
ethnicity, like saying it's not an
that.
ethnicity, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I was like, it's true, because yo nunca me dije latina o hispana hasta que llegué aquí. Never.
Yeah.
Never. That is
Yeah.
something that I never understood. That, of course, lo miraba allá en Honduras to, like, I don't know, Premio Lo Nuestro, where they would put it like en Telemundo, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like, oh, los premios, like música latina. I was like, I don't know what the heck is that, but cool. Like, it's music in Spanish, you know? But
Mhm.
then, like, I come here and then I have to check boxes and boxes and boxes of that. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And then they asked me down there, like, what's your race? And I'm like, excuse me, like, I don't see my country in this in this place, like, it was a term that I was pretty new to me. And it was nice to kind of like see a video like that, because it's okay. I was like, I'm glad that someone brought it up, because we're so up to here saying like, oh, Latinos and this and that, but like, do you actually know what it means? Do you actually know the definition, rather than just put it on yourself?
Yeah, especially because like just like the whole Hispanic and Latino like identity, like it's so like I get why you don't know, like why people just don't know better, and that's because
Hmm.
like we're always pushed to it. Like I
Yeah.
didn't realize that like Latin well, I'm not gonna say I didn't realize, like I knew Latinos came in all different shapes, but
Hmm.
I thought it was enough. I thought it wasn't well, let me rephrase that. I think it is enough for Latinos to just say they're Latino because I feel like other people shouldn't force us to like
Hmm.
identify how they want us to identify. But I also think it's important to acknowledge that like what you say has meaning, and it's like, como yo dije, like si le dijera a mi abuela como yo soy hispano, me va a decir obvio pasmado, like like like
Duh.
like like duh. Or like
Hmm.
if I said I was Latino, she was like if I told my grandma like, oh, yo soy Latino, she's like, ¿por qué dices Latino en vez de hondureño? Like
Hmm.
they would say
What is
stuff
the
like that.
difference? They will probably be like, what's the
Yeah,
difference?
exactly. And then and like with like I feel like these are the kind of videos that like make people uncomfortable, like when you get told like Hispanic is in a race. And some people will reject it even if they have like full on proof. And I'm like, you see this picture of my grandmother that I'm showing you, who's like a native woman, and a picture of Rosalia. Are you gonna tell me these people are the same like race? And it's like
No.
like
Yeah,
come on now.
exactly.
Um and then the whole thing about like I like to make content, of course, that like is like fun, but the whole like appealing to like the Latino audience thing is something that like I'm very passionate about talking about because like well not passionate, but like in the way of like I don't know if you know this, but like every September TikTok like sends like PR to like Latino creators, right?
Yes. Hmm.
I've never received that. And
Well,
I've never received it, yeah, and, like, like, I used to be upset about it, but then I realized, like, I don't receive that because I don't make the kind of content that they want me to make.
the dancing
Because
content.
I've and then I was like, 'cause yeah, or like the dancing content or just like, like stereotypical Latino videos, or just like videos that like don't challenge Latinidad and stuff like that. Because at first I was like, maybe I just don't have enough followers. Like I thought it was a problem with me. And I was like, maybe I just don't have enough followers. But I had 400,000 back then.
I
And
was
then I saw people
really.
with like I saw people with 30,000 getting
Mhm.
followers, and I was like, because la cuenta que tengo ahorita no es mi cuenta original. Like that's not my
Oh,
original
okay.
account. Yeah,
Oh,
I used to
really?
have an account that had 600,000 followers. Yeah,
And they didn't
that
send
was
you
like the account
anything?
that like I had. No, no, no.
No.
And the thing is, like, I knew that they were aware of my existence because como hay una forma que la gente tiene que, like, they need to fill it out,
Mhm.
like all the Latino creators, and say like, oh, do you want this PR package? And there's like, if you have any other people that you want to suggest to get a PR package, let us know. I got put down by, so I'm not gonna say their names because
Yeah.
that's their business, but I got put down by Latino TikTokers who had 1 million followers, 10 million followers, 500,000, and I never got anything. And I was like, it's a, and then they do it every year, and I'm like, it's okay, guys. Like I don't, it's like I'm fine with not receiving anything. Like
Mhm.
you know, like I'm fine with not receiving anything because I don't make that kind of content. So that's definitely something that like I had to come to terms with. That I was like, I'm fine. I'm fine making like not making the content that they want because like I don't know, like that's just the kind of person I am. Like I rather, because I tell people um I rather not get paid for because a lot of these like TikTokers they get paid for like this kind of content. Like
Mhm.
I'd rather make nothing than make like $1,000 talking about like toxicas and toxicos. And I'm like, come on, like be for real.
Yeah, I
And I'm
get you, I get you.
yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't know, so what happened with the other account? Did it get closed or just
Oh, para ser honesto, that account got taken down because I was wild on that account. Like
okay.
I made crazy I made crazy videos.
Okay, 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 that's fine. I mean, it
But
happens, but
like but on that same point, the reason that I haven't been able to get to like 600K again is because I completely changed what kind of content I make.
Oh,
Because
really?
I told myself I was like I want to make like better content for like my community and like still make them laugh, but like still kind of like educate people at the same time. So that's why like my growth is like a little bit more slower, but like I'm also like fine with that.
Yeah, because I feel like even with social media, I think that we have already put into like, como estas cajas, like these boxes about like, okay, what is the content for TikTok? What is the content for social media? But when we challenge that, I feel people are like, ew, I want to be here, like, I don't know, seeing like people
Yeah.
like opening something, talking, I don't know, like you said, like, hablando de tóxicas, like, you want to, wanna find out what type of toxica you are, or like, things like that, like you
Yeah.
you can find that content on TikTok, I'm sure. you know. But
Yeah,
then
no,
like
definitely.
when we see content like yours, like personally, I enjoy like once I saw you the first time I followed you, and it's like, okay, I understand that that is my For You page, right? It's people that are talking about this, and it's not what other people like might want. But it's like, do we really like going to be kind of like shadow banning or punishing like people like you who are creating content not only for like our community but also to educate them in a sense, or like bringing more information available? Because why do I have to go and search for that, right? Like I understand, like I have to make my research, but then like creators like yours and like you and others like are bringing and making that amazing work, bringing that educational towards, why do they limit that part? You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's
Mhm.
something that, of course, like social media is a little bit of the thing, is bien superficial, you know. They want to be bien superficial. They just want to kind of like, ooh, like touch like Latinos como de la puntita, like arribita, like just embarrarse poquito,
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, and like like you said, like, but then it comes to September and they're like, oh, it's like, or like the Hispanic Latino month or whatever, and then all the colors change, and then they're like putting all this nice, like content creators, and I don't blame them. They all make their content and all that, but then what about like that occasional part? Like, should we be
Yeah.
talking about like our community, or we're just gonna be superficial and for someone just to put us just to kind of gain money? I'm just saying, you know.
And for diversity points, yeah.
Yeah, kind of the same thing what they do with Prime Month.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not fun. Like I feel I laugh when I see those kind of like Prime, because I'm like, damn, Prime Month is about so like more than poner en las tiendas calcetines o full of
No, this
rainbow,
was
you
like
know?
honestly like I can say like I'm gay before, you know, but like
Mhm.
this was the most annoying Pride Month ever because I felt like so many companies were like pushing it and I was like, you guys literally donate to like people who are trying to take our rights away, but like you're gonna throw a rainbow shirt in my face thinking I'm gonna forget about it. Like be
Yes.
like sé serio, please, like please, you know?
Yes. Yes, and I don't know, I have seen it like, I don't know, it's just seemed too performative, and I feel like people should start
Yeah.
questioning that. It's too performative, and I know only with Pride Month, like también con like Black History Month, also with like Hispanic Month, with Asian Month, like Pacific Island, like it's always so performative, and I'm like,
Yeah.
damn it, like is someone not looking at this, or it's just me like in my mind thinking it's so performative, like people just getting it for the bank
Yeah.
that they want to get, you know. um
Yeah.
but I wanted to, ask you, since you started creating, content. I didn't know you kind of like got the other, account down, but with the new account and even with the other one, the focus is more on like Latinx, Latina, um, community. What has been something that kind of surprised you on the platform?
I have a whole list of stuff written down.
I'm
Like,
here for
I
it.
think
I'm here.
the first one is like how many people who are not Latino don't understand that concepts work differently around the world, specifically in in the United States versus like Latin America. Just like the whole thing, it's like a lot of like for example, like the whole like race, ethnicity, and nationality thing. A lot of people like to tell Latinos like, oh, you guys don't know the difference between that. But when you ask them about it, they don't know the difference either. Like, for
Hmm.
example, like there was like a lot of videos like about like people who are like obviously not Latino getting asked like, oh, what race is your favorite to date? And people are like, oh, Hispanics, you know, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans. And
Hmm.
I'm like, but we don't know the difference, you know? And
Hmm.
especially like concepts like you like people like talk about like, oh yeah, I know how race works in Latin America. You say the word mestizaje and they're like, what does that mean? You know, it's like it's like, do you actually know? Like, do you actually know? And the whole thing about like por ejemplo, like yo tengo una madre que es blanca, like salvadoreña pero
Hmm.
blanca.
Hmm.
Y aquí en este like in this country like la gente no la mira como blanca, like they see her as like Latina. Pero
Hmm.
en El Salvador like she's
La chela.
undeniably like
Hmm.
blanca. Like there's no,
Hmm.
you know, and the thing is like, yeah, she's chele. And the thing
Hmm.
is like, even like she calls herself like she's like soy blanca, you know. But when I posted her on TikTok and I said like, and I told TikTok like, oh, my mom is like white. They were like, your mom's not white. Your mom's indigenous. And I was like, are you guys crazy? I was like, are you guys crazy? And then so it's like a lot. It's so exhausting sometimes where it's just like, how many of you don't realize like how do you know? And I'm not gonna say like I think that as like a US born Latino, of course you're not gonna understand how it works in Latin America. But I also think that you shouldn't like speak over someone who does. Cause I'm not gonna say I
Hmm.
know the Latin American experience because I only lived there for like a little bit. But the thing is
Hmm.
like I study about it and like I specifically like I study Central America, like Brazil. So it's like you know, don't
Hmm.
tell my mom like, how are you gonna tell my like, if I told my mom, like, "Oh, they're calling you indigenous," they would be like she would be like, "What?" Like, she would just be so confused,
Hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
just like it's just so crazy to me. But that was, like, one of the biggest things. That's kinda why I started making the content I was, because I was like, if people are, like, looking because I also think it's important to consume content educating people about other ethnic groups that are not your own. You know, like
Yeah.
I follow black creators, I
Hmm.
follow like Jewish creators because I'm like, who else better to get Jewish information than from Jewish people, you know?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I was like, I want to be that source for people. And like I've been told by a lot of people like, oh, like I've learned a lot about like the Latino community from you, which like makes me feel good because I'm like, thank God that you're like looking to a Latino for like this kind of information.
Yeah.
Um but that's, like, probably the biggest one. Another thing that's kind of like the same thing that I was talking about with my mom, people will argue about people's identity like it's their job,
Oh
like
my
it's
God.
their
Yes.
job, like, it is, like, so weird, like, I remember, like, cuando yo digo que soy blanco in TikTok, the comments turn into a war zone, Like, there was this one video where, like, I was like, "Oh, yeah, like, you guys might not see me as white in the United States, but, like, in Honduras, like, soy blanco," you know? And
Mhm.
people it got 10,000 comments of just people arguing back and forth. "He's white. No, he's not, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "You guys need a job. Like, you guys need to get a job." Like, I was like, "Come on now, like, get a hobby, read a book, like, something. Like, why are you spending hours and hours doing this?" And then, I remember there was like the one time where I posted my because like so for context, my
Mhm.
like mi familia hondureña, like they're like native, like they're like
Mhm.
brown native, and then my Salvadoran side, they're like mestizo and blanco. So one time I
Mhm.
posted one of my cousins from my Honduran side, and people were like, "Why is your cousin Asian fishing?" And I was like, "Asian fishing?" And then they were like, "Yeah, look at her eyes," and I was like,
Oh Lord Jesus Christ. Oh my
and I was
God.
like, and then I had to explain that like that natives can have eyes that kind of look typically like what you would
Mhm.
associate with East Asians. And
Mhm.
they were like, "Oh, your cousin looks Filipino." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Okay."
Mhm.
I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So just like that. Um Another thing is like people like I'm not gonna say I'm like cuando yo digo esto no estoy hablando de latinoamericanos, estoy hablando de los como like, los latinos que nacieron aquí.
Mhm.
They have such I don't know how to say it in English or Spanish, like superiority complex that
Okay,
they
I know.
speak Spanish, that they speak Spanish over people who don't speak Spanish. The ones that are born here.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I want you guys to know that no matter if you speak Spanish or not, if you're born here, to Latin Americans, you're a gringo. Like it doesn't matter. Like you're
Mhm.
still a gringo regardless. Like it doesn't matter if you speak Spanish or not. And then people don't realize like for example, me, like my first language is Spanish, right? And
Mhm.
I never truly lost my Spanish because mi familia no habla inglés. Like they do not speak English. Like if you are
Mhm.
talking English, they're gonna assume that you're like talking bad about them. So like you just speak Spanish in the house, you know? And the
Mhm.
same thing with my other like my Salvadoreño side. When I'm talking about my family, I'm usually talking about my Honduran side, but we can talk about
Okay.
that. But yeah, so like I don't know, it's like the whole thing of like the whole no sabo like joke turned into
Oh,
like an innocent joke into like a whole like you guys are not like Latino enough because you're a no
yeah.
sabo kid. And
Mhm.
it's just like you guys turned such an innocent joke into like literally like oppression Olympics where it's like it'll be like a freaking like white Latino telling like a brown Latino who doesn't speak Spanish, like, "Oh, you're not Latino." Whole time that kid's parents speak freaking like Nahuatl and don't speak any Spanish at all. So it's just like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? You know, like so
Yeah.
that definitely like bothers me. I see all the time. Um Also something kind of on that same note, it surprised me how many people hate the term Latinx. Like
Yes.
so many people hate that word, and it's so crazy to me because the thing is like yo entiendo, like I get it, like I get not
Mhm.
wanting to use it. Yo ni lo uso, like I don't use
Mhm.
that word. But then when you ask someone why they don't like it, and they're like, "Oh, because it doesn't make sense in Spanish," and I'm like, "Okay, so do you want to use Latine?" They're like, "No, I
Mhm.
don't like that either." And I'm like, "So your problem isn't that it doesn't work in Spanish. You just don't want to
Yeah.
change like the language." And I'm just
Mhm.
like I'm not like the majority of people who want to be called Latine, like no te están preguntando decir como preguntes, like
Mhm.
preguntes, computadores, like they're not asking you to do all that, they're just
Yeah.
asking you to just say like Latine, like simple as that, or
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
something so simple. And it's just like me personally, like when I talk about the Latino community, I say Latino community. But if someone says
Mhm.
like, oh, like I want to be called Latinx, I'm gonna use that. It doesn't impact me in any way, shape, or form. Like I'm a grown man. Like I'm not gonna be like, and people will get bothered by it, and I'm just like, you are getting bothered over an X, like an X.
I know. It's just I oh my god. It's I never understood like that part where people get so like, oh my god, stop using like Latinx or Latina. And I'm just like, sometimes I have talked with people that they don't even identify as, with like Tina or Latino. They like to use Latine or Latinx. And I'm just like, I'm not gonna be here like, no, pero es que sos Latino. Like I'm not gonna put it on them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I am gonna respect it. So at the same time, it's like if you don't want to use it, don't use it. But I'm not gonna be here and
Mhm.
like poniéndotelo en la frente, like no, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's just my thing. But
Yeah.
I never understood why people got so like mad until like I started seeing a bunch of videos on TikTok. I'm like, did people get mad for a letter? Like,
And like the thing is, like, hablan sin saber nada. Like they're like, oh, this word was invented by gringos. I'm like, no, it wasn't. Like you like this word was literally invented by like it was used like in like the 90s by like Puerto Rican and Brazilian activists in their countries. And I'm like, you're just looking for any excuse to hate the word. Like, I'm sorry at this point. And it like la cosa es que like I defend like kids that don't
mhm.
speak Spanish all the time, pero cuando alguien que no habla en español me está diciendo like, oh, I don't use that word because it doesn't work in Spanish, and I'm like, ¿cómo vas a saber vos? Like, how would you know? Like,
Right.
like how would you know? Like, you're saying like, come on now.
I know.
But I think the biggest, like, well, not the biggest thing, but like another thing that surprised me that's like my favorite and like the last thing, is like how many people have thanked me for being like a Central American creator online because there's so many people. Like the thing is like growing up, like it doesn't matter if it's like MTV Tres, BuzzFeed Latino, pero like Me Too, like most of the stuff I don't relate to it because it's very like Mexican centered, and that's just the
Mhm.
truth, or like Puerto Rican, or like um. But people have like DM me like, oh, like thank you for like making content that I actually relate to, like um especially like even not even only Central Americans, like I'll get DMs and like messages from like Brazilians, Haitians,
Mhm.
Beliceños, and they're like, "Oh, thank you for not forgetting about us." And that's so sad to hear because it's just like these people are reaching out to people who don't forget them, which just tells you like how much they feel like they're just not like
Forgotten. Mhm.
included in like these conversations. Because I make it my like because the thing is like this is like what I study, so like of course like I'm gonna
Mhm.
include all the countries that I've learned about. So like I always make it a deal to include everyone. Like for example, like we had like a festival at like my school where it was like like Latin American festival, and I made sure that they included Haiti. They've never included Haiti, and they never included Belize. And I was like, you know
Mhm.
what? Like throw the French Caribbean islands in there too. Like put Guadeloupe, put Martinique. Like for
Please.
like I'm like just like throw them in there.
Mhm.
But yeah, like it's always nice to hear like how like people go to my account when they want like specifically like Central American content.
Yeah, yeah, and it's honestly it's true. Like people say, like sometimes we don't see a lot of us in social media or creating content. So it's nice to kind of like when I see someone talking about Honduras, when I see someone talking about Panama, Belize, when I see someone talking about Belize, I'm like it's just a country that no one talked about, and I'm like, oh my god, like thank God I can like instant follow because I can learn more, right? And then it's like other countries
Mm,
as well, and it's like wow, like sometimes we just and we just tend to focus on other countries, and then we're like we don't understand how these people feel unseen, and not only unseen, they feel like no, they cannot relate with a lot of content that might be in like so and so main media, right? But I wanted to
mhm.
kind of touch a little bit what you share about your about your people that make it a joke, like a job, honestly, about questioning, you know, your identity, because I have never fight in a comment section like I fought one time on TikTok. And can you not? It was because, and they even told me Google is free, Central American doesn't exist, and I legit commented, "How you gonna tell me the place where I was born doesn't exist?" Like it was a joke. I have never,
Yeah,
and people are like in here on the podcast might know that I have received like plenty of comments in my social media, and I'm stay out of trouble. But you start questioning Central America, I'm gonna roll my sleeves and I'm gonna go for a fight because
yeah.
hell no.
No, yeah. Especially with like that's why like when I saw people talking about Central America as kind of like an extension of Mexico, that's when I was like, okay, that's when I need to like come in and make
Yeah.
like some content about Central America because I was like, like it's so much more than that. Because a lot of people they're like, "Oh, it's not real, like, it's just part of, like, it's just a concept," and I'm like, "You realize Latin America is a concept, right? Like, it's not a real continent." So I'm like, "Why can't we say that Central America is a thing? Like, be serious." Um, and especially with, like, questioning your identity, it's like, for example, I get a lot of comments that are like, "Oh, like, si tu familia es indígena, ¿por qué no dices que vos sos indígena?" And I'm like, "My family might be native, but, like, that's them. Like,
Mhm.
of course, like I'm proud of like coming from that family, but like I also come from a place where like in Honduras, nadie me va a cuestionar de nada. You know, like they're not gonna
Mhm.
question me in anything. And I've been to Honduras, like I go to Honduras like every couple months, and it's like
Mhm.
I never have to like worry about like people questioning like anything because the thing is I look like what a Honduran should look like, especially like
Mhm.
in the capital, like in
Yeah.
Tegucigalpa or like San Pedro, places like that, where it's like back in like our village, nobody looks like me, but they
Mhm.
also like I also don't have to worry that like someone's gonna be like, oh, like you're too dark, people are not gonna say like if anything, they tell me I'm too light. But like and people
Mhm.
don't realize that, and it's just like and people are like, "Well, you look Latino," and I'm like, "I look Latino because you're used to seeing people who look like me on like Telemundo,
Yes.
Univision," and I'm like, "But that's not what my family looks like." Like, if you look at a picture of like my Honduran family, you could point to me, and be like, "That's the Chile," like, um, but
You
like stuff
know.
like that, and it's just like, don't try and tell me like how I should identify when it's like I'm like acknowledging my privileges when it's like,
Mhm.
and the thing is like I don't ignore that that's where I come from because like that's the majority of my culture. Like, claro que soy salvadoreño también, pero la cosa es que, of course, also borders are not real. So there's
Mhm.
the like, la gente se enoja cuando yo le digo, like, cuando yo le digo a la gente, like, there's no difference between El Salvador and Honduras. It's just racism.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, be for real. Like, it's the same, basically the same people. Because like in my village, like, it's like a 10-minute walk from the Salvadoran border. Like, they're like haciendo las pupusas in our village, like, people cross the border all the time. And then people are like, "Oh, like why don't you ever talk about like your Salvadoran side?" And I'm like, "Cuz it's the same thing."
This
And
is
I'm
a 10
like, "It's
minutes
the
from
same
there.
like it's like it's the same thing." Because like the thing people don't realize is like mi familia habla con caliche. Like you know what
Mhm.
caliche is, right?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah, like my family talks with caliche, which is not seen as like a Honduran thing. And like the thing
Mhm.
is like my family even gets like looked at because like a lot of people say like oh los negros y los indios they'll say de
Mhm.
Honduras they talk like vulgar. Like they talk like vulgar
Mhm.
like or like malas palabras and stuff like that. And I've seen it on TikTok all the time too. That to me sounds like home. Like when I hear these people like saying like, "Oh, como mierda cerote," like stuff like that, I'm like,
Yes.
that's what I want. Like that's what makes me feel comfortable. And I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
like si la gente quiere hablar así como que son ricos del capital capitalino, like okay, you do you, girl, you do you. And it's just like I just I know what I am, and I don't need to like argue with anyone
Mhm.
over it. And it's just like and I've learned that
Exactly.
because I definitely used to argue, but then I was just like, you know what? There's no point. I'm never gonna meet these people in real life. So
True. And I can identify a lot because I was born in la capital, right? So like yo soy like, lo que le dicen la capitalina. Y a veces en Honduras they're always like, caminan ahí.
yeah.
Exactly. Like oh shit, I was born in la capital. But my family, but I'm more close to my mom's side of my family. And la familia de mi mami
Mm,
creció en un pueblo que se llama Reitoca. So es en el sur de Honduras, like cerca de Choluteca.
mm,
I love
mm.
like for me, like I feel like I consider myself retoqueña before I consider myself like capitalina,
Yeah, of
just
course.
because like for me it was like well like Tegucigalpa was where like yeah I was born and I went to school, but then like any time I had was like retoca, you know what I mean, retoca,
Yeah.
right?
Mm,
So then when you were talking about like why don't you say like when people say like oh if your family is indigenous why you don't consider yourself indigenous, and in my case I feel like the whole todo el pueblo de mi mami is indigenous, is Lenca, right? And my family. But then I'm just like,
yeah,
well,
our
like I'm
family
not gonna.
too.
It's like at first I was like, first like my dad has nothing of like native, like nothing. He's like el pan blanco de la familia, right? So then like you look at me, like you look at me
Yeah.
and like you said, like yo soy la blanca, right? Like yo soy el pan con mantequilla. I am the lightest
Uh-huh.
skin of my family. If you see my brother, it's like he's darker
Uh-huh.
than me, and it's like well, and again, I never got questioned that in Honduras because it was like, well, like el mestizaje, mestiza. Like it's something that is so normal in Honduras that I never got questioned. Like of course I kind of like acknowledge my mom's side of being native and I respect it. And there's certain parts of my life that I associate like with my native side, like la comida, lo que es rico, lo que es las tradiciones and all that stuff. But then but then I have to accept and acknowledge the privilege that I grew up and was born in La Capital. And that's a whole thing, right? So then I come here in the
Exactly.
United States, y me dice, vos no te ves hondureña, es que estás muy blanca. I'm like, shut up. Like, how are you gonna question me
Yeah,
like how I look? And I acknowledge that I have the privilege. I acknowledge that to me it's like, well, you see, and like you said, in television, because that's people look like me, and I never didn't see that, right? Because of that, my color skin. But then at the same time, like, don't come and question me that I don't look Honduran. Don't come and question me and put me like te ves de I don't know sé dónde. Like they try to, I don't know, bring me all the South American countries, and I'm like, as much as I love my Latin American, countries, I am not from there. So like, why you start
yeah,
questioning? You know what I mean?
yeah. Like, mi familia, like, do you know where El Cubulero is?
Mm? Mm-mm.
I don't know if you know where that. It's like es un pueblito pequeñito, like in the south, like hasta la
De
costa,
qué
like la
parte?
costa
¿De qué parte de departamento
de
es?
Valle,
Oh, vaya. Okay,
Valle.
okay, 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 okay. Okay, so it's not bad.
It's like
Mhm.
queda una hora sur de Nacaome. It's like
Oh,
near
okay.
Nacaome, but like
Okay.
more south than that. So like
Okay.
my family is like the southest you can get. It is so hot there, by the way. Like it is. I always dying.
That's right, toca. That's right, toca. It's so hot.
But yeah, like a lot of people, they're like, like they're like, oh, you have to claim it, and it's like I just didn't grow up there. Like
Mhm.
my grandma always tells me stories about like how when she was like a kid, like they grew up in like houses made out of like clay and like rocks and like like anytime I go back to Honduras, they grew up in like a nice house, like no
Mhm.
tiene aire, pero like that one room has AC.
Mhm.
um but yeah, just like that. And then like also people ask me like, oh, like why don't you ever go back to El Salvador? My entire Salvadoran family is here. Like tengo una
Mhm.
tía allá que creo que está viviendo allá, pero she's like super Catholic, so I don't know if
Oh,
I'm allowed
yeah.
over there. So, but but so that's why like I mean I used to like I said like I lived there for a couple months when I was younger, with my mom, but then like she noticed that like I would probably be better like going to school here, so that's when we came back.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, you have a viral audio that I love every single video, and I see that. Okay, I don't get tired of the audio because it's so one hilarious and funny. But then I went before, like I think before I went viral, I went in the comments. Can you not those comment? That comment section is a
Yeah.
joke. It's a joke. So I want to talk a little bit about your, kind of video audio. And then for some people that might not know, it's a very like funny and also valid audio. And also about the comment section, how people confuse el voceo con vosotros.
Oh my god! And this isn't even just a thing on TikTok. Like this is a thing like all over like anyone. Like I have so many notes about this because I'm so tired of people confundiendo vosotros with voceo, and it's just like it's so tiring trying to explain it to people because like um. ¿Te acuerdas cuando estábamos hablando de like changing your accent depending on who you're
Uh-huh.
talking to?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I cannot use voceo around like Mexicans and Caribbeans because they will literally like not understand anything I'm saying. Like if
Yep.
I say like vos sos pasmado, that sounds like another language to them. Like that does not sound like Spanish. Like that does
Mm-hmm.
not sound like Spanish to them. So I get like I'm not gonna lie, I get triggered when I see some people that like they're like, oh, that's how Spaniards talk, and I'm like, if I talked voceo to a Spaniard, they would understand like 10% of what I'm saying,
Yeah.
especially with like our accents. And it's just like people don't realize
Mm-hmm.
that like voceo is used like in Argentina, Uruguay, El Salvador, Guatemala,
Mm-hmm.
parts of Colombia, Venezuela. It's like used in all these countries, but they're not the ones that you're seeing on Telemundo. So that's why you're not
Mm-hmm.
hearing like voz. Like
Mm-hmm.
for example, like vos ves el programa que se llama Elite, like Elite.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In the new season, there's like a girl who's Argentinian, and like that accent doesn't sound so similar to mine, but just hearing her use voceo is so
Mm-hmm.
like I'm like, finally, I see this on TV, you know, like finally I
Mhm.
see it on TV. Um, but yeah, like a lot of people are probably gonna watch this and be like, "What the fuck is voceo?" You know, like, but it's like basically like like if I'm talking to you, like we're around the same age, so I'm gonna say like vos sos to you, you know. But if I'm talking to my
Mhm.
grandma, I'm be like usted, you know. But the thing
Mhm.
is, like a lot of people are like, "Well, do like los hondureños no usan tuteo," and I'm like, "We do." It's just so kind of like blurred lines because like for example, my dad would never call my like his brother tu because that's seen as
Mhm.
like gay. Like I don't know if that makes sense to me. I know
Yeah.
it makes sense to
Mhm.
you too, but I
Mhm.
don't know if it'll make sense to other people. But like my dad would never call another man tu. He would only call him boss. But like
Mhm.
my dad might call like my stepmother tu, stuff like that. Well, he's probably gonna say boss, but like
Mhm.
si yo estoy hablando con una tía mayor que tiene como digamos 30 años, que no se quiere sentir señora, I would call her
Mhm.
like tú. I wouldn't say like
Mhm.
usted. Like for example, my mom does not let me call her usted. And people get so surprised by that because people are like, "You call your mom vos?" And I'm like, if I call my mom usted, she would like smack me for making her feel like an old lady, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just the way it works in Honduras. Like it depends. Whereas like in other countries like Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, like they say vos to everyone. I found out they say vos to their grandmas, and I had a heart attack because because if I called my grandma vos, they- oh my god, I would not live
Los
to tell
dientes
the
fueron
story
los otros.
because no, because there was one time um I texted my aunt, right? And I'm so used to texting like my cousins in Spanish. Like I barely talk to my
Mhm.
aunt, like text. I like call her.
Mhm.
And I said like estás en la casa, like estás.
Mhm.
And she came outside and she was like, ¿Y vos a quién puta le estás hablando con el voceo? And I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, mira el mensaje. And I was like, oh my bad. I was like, my bad. And she went to go tell all my aunts about it, and they were all making fun of me. And I was like, I'm sorry, like it was an accident. I'm just used to talking to younger people. Um, but even like especially on TikTok, like most
Mhm.
of my content is in English because the majority of my audience, I mean, I would say most of my audience understands English. But
Mhm.
of course there's like some of my audience who like they speak Spanish or even like Portuguese, but like I'm talking about
Mhm.
in Spanish right now. And I'll say something like cállate instead of cállate.
Mhm.
And they'll be
Mhm.
like, why'd you say it like that? Or like decime en vez de dime, you know?
Mhm.
And they're like, why are you saying it like that? I'm like, because that's the way I say it. I'm like, don't like leave me alone, you know? Like for example, there was one TikTok where I said like ponete las pilas, and people were
Mhm.
like they were calling me a Nosavo kid, and I was like, whoa. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, what are you
Wow.
talking about? And then people need to understand that like we say stuff like veni instead of ven, habla instead of
Mhm.
habla, corre,
Mhm.
pegame, stuff like that instead of like
Mhm.
pegame. Like to me, saying pegame doesn't sound right. Like it just doesn't come out
It
of my
doesn't
mouth
sound.
like naturally. Yeah,
Yeah.
but basically like that. Voceo is like I'm very passionate about voceo because it's the way we talk, you know. And so I'm always
Yes.
making like I'm making a new series on TikTok where I'm just gonna get like either my like Mexican friend or like Dominican friend to just like show like comparisons between the way we talk because like I feel like people need to know. Like, I'm tired
Yes.
of people not knowing.
I love Oseo so much. I mean, I grew up, talking with Oseo. Yo también le digo a mi mami vos. Hey, vos vení. I was like, people,
Uh-huh.
okay, the first kind of like month when I introduced my boyfriend to my mom, my boyfriend had this face of like, ¿cómo le decís a tu mami? Vos? He had this
Was he
face of
Central
like,
American?
yeah, his dad is from Mexico and su mamá is de San Salvador, pero he's more like related to the Mexican side.
Uh,
Yes, yeah, but still, he was like
uh,
in shock, and I was just like, I mean, like, and also con mis tíos, and I feel like because I grew up kind of more on the side of my mom, I all of them, por ejemplo, digamos, yo le digo a mi tía, yo no les digo a mis tíos like tía Tere, sino como, hey Tere, vení. Like and then
uh,
probably sounds bad to someone, but it's just because I grew up so close to them that it's como que le estoy diciendo a un amigo, right? Like, hey, vos
yeah.
vení, hey. Pero sí, I like to my uncles and aunt that I don't have any like super far. It's like, oh, tía, o tío, blah, 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 but it's like el voceo. And it's kind of like interesting to say, like, when I saw your comment section, I was like, oh my god, please tell me this is not something that like he needs to come and explain here.
No, the shock people get, like, it's so funny, like, the thing I was mentioning earlier, like, how, like,
Hmm.
vulgar, like, we talk sometimes, people get so surprised because 'cause they're like, "Why are you cursing so much?" And I'm like, "That's just Spanish." Like,
Hmm.
the shock people get when, like, they hear, like, me call my cousin cerote or, like, my aunts calling each other cerote or,
Hmm.
like, stuff like that, and they're like, "Isn't that a slur?" And I'm like, "No." Like, not between us, not between us, you know? I'm like, "Not between us." It's just, it's like saying, like, "Maje" to us, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know something? So I work around a lot of, Mexicans, and one of the things that I will not say is a tú. I will not say tú. For me, like, cuando yo era pequeña, a mí me decían, me estás tuteando y me iban a pegar. So that is a no
Uh,
no thing from myself, right? I cannot, yo no puedo tutear. So yo siempre le digo a mis manes, hey, boss, like, boss, like, that's the most like Central American thing. Because if I say like pasame la chumpa, they're gonna be looking at me like I'm crazy. Uh, you know. But one time, one of my coworkers said that he was working in another job with watermelons, and he told me, "Verdad que a los guatemaltecos le dicen cerote?" And I looked at him, and I was like, "No, no, 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 no." I was like, "Who told you that?" And then he was like, "Oh, like coworker was saying that." I was like, "You cannot call a watermelon like that. Please, you cannot." And then he's
Yeah.
like, "But they were calling each other like that," and I was like, "They were calling each other like that. Do not go and say that from
Yeah,
you to someone else."
yeah.
It's like you said, like we can call each other that, but if like someone come and call me like that, I'm gonna look like, excuse
Yeah,
me,
I'm gonna
who
look at
are
them like
you?
they're crazy, like,
Who are you to
because the
call me
thing is,
like that?
like, and people will say stuff like, "Oh, like if like for example, like it tends to happen a lot with like Mexicans. They'll be told like, "Oh,
Hmm.
if you're Mexican, you can't say that." It's not that they can't say that because it
Hmm.
means something else to them, but just don't
Hmm.
say it to a Central American because then it's just like, "Whoa, te calmas,"
Hmm.
like, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know if you get a lot of but I sometimes I get this comment from my coworkers, that they're like, es que ustedes hablan raro, and I'm like, it's not that we talk different, it's just like raro lo que ustedes le quieran decir. It's just that the way we talk is that we don't use a tú, we use a voz, and that's how we relate. But of course, like, for example, like I'm not gonna call my, even if it's my bestie in that work, I'm able my, I'm not gonna call that because she's gonna flip, and she's gonna be like, "What the heck are you calling? Like, are you calling me stupid or something like that?" And it have come to
uh,
so many times where, like, like the word chumpa, because I am so used to saying it, and like I have to say like pasame la chaqueta. It's like, oh lord, like it's
chaqueta,
not
yeah.
me, it's not me. But then my boyfriend, because he's like, his dad is Mexican. He told me something about what chaqueta means in another parts of Mexico, and I was like, so cómo le digo entonces, porque no me van a escuchar, no me van a entender como yo le digo.
Yeah. No,
So
and
it's
then
like,
the thing is
yeah, you
like
go ahead. Sorry.
I taught no, sorry. I taught my roommates how to like I taught them what I was like because I was like, if you're living with me, I'm not gonna change how I talk. And I'm like, because I used to change the way I talk depending on like how I would say it. But I'm like, you need to
Hmm.
understand if you hear a huh come out of my mouth,
Hmm.
that's an S. I'm like,
Hmm.
you need to understand like that's an S. And I'm like, I taught them what like Pahmado man, I taught them what like um I've it's so funny because they refuse to say cerote. It's so funny. Like I'm like, just say I won't tell anyone, And because they're Mexican, they're like, no, no. And then I'm trying to think of what other word, like, oh, that whole like what do you call marshmallows?
Oh, besitos. Besitos, 100%.
Okay, besitos, right? Besitos, right? Exactly. So like the whole besitos thing and like a bon to me, that's a lollipop. Like
Uh-huh.
I've never heard it called like it's just so funny the differences, but like it's funny discussing the differences in a way that's not like judgy. You know what I'm saying? Like in a
Mhm.
funny way that like you can say like, oh, that's funny because like for example, like the word bicho, like you can't say that in some places.
Yeah.
You know, because it means like it means something
Something else.
else, and it's just like when it's like in a way where you're just like comparing and contrasting, like that's fun.
Mhm.
But in a way where like, oh, that sounds so weird. Like, why do you guys say
Mhm.
it like that? Like people were in my comments saying besitos means kiss. I'm like, no soy dundo. Like I know, like I know,
Mhm.
like come on now. But
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, something that I have told my boyfriend because um he didn't know nothing of Central American slang, by the way. Nothing.
Mm,
Nothing, cero, nada. You know, he has only been to El Salvador, I think, once. And I have always, you know, so since we have been together for 5 years, so like, ahorita ya sabe un poquito más, you know, like, so like,
mm,
you know, kind of like understanding a little bit more and all that. So sometimes I told him, and I have told him como decir, por ejemplo, like, yo no le voy a decir cinto, le voy a decir faja, like, you know, things like that, right? And then I have told him, as long as you understand what the heck I'm saying, I'm good. You can say whatever you want. You can come and be like, pero es que así no se
mm.
dice, or like, that's not how I learned to say it. That is on you. But if you understand me, that what I'm calling is like, pasame la faja, pasame la chumpa. If you understand what I'm saying, I
Wait,
don't care the other way you say it back. But as long as you understand what I'm
they don't
asking for.
they don't say faja
No, de escalecinto. De say
like
that
for
la
a
faja es
belt.
sí, para guardarse las lonjas. Le llaman cinto.
Oh my God,
Uh,
that's no that. Oh,
yeah.
cinto. Oh,
I don't know. I
wait,
can't say cinto.
you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's like what's it called? When I called it a cinturón, the one that like
Oh, el cinturón. Mm-hmm.
the, yeah.
Like
My friend
seatbelt,
was like,
right?
"What are you talking about?" I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, what? And I'll get told that even like and sometimes it's like by like my friends who like kind of like a lot of people who learn Spanish in school. The Spanish they learn, of course, is not like español hondureño.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you say
Mm-hmm.
like I got corrected by my roommate once, which I thought was the funniest thing because I was like, I'm gonna pass the vacuum. And she
Mm-hmm.
was like, "You're gonna what?" And I was like, "I'm gonna pass the vacuum. Like I'm gonna pass the vacuum." She was like, "It's just you just gonna vacuum." And I was like, "That's what I said." And she was like, "You're not gonna pass the vacuum. It's just you vacuum." And I
You
was like,
vacuum.
"Girl," I was like, "Shut up." I was like, "Shut up." I was like, "Come on now."
Yeah, and you know something about Oseo that is even different in every region, right? Like you said, like in Salvador is a bit different than in Nicaragua. Por ejemplo, las veces que yo fui a Nicaragua, there's some words that I'm still like, okay, I didn't know what it means. You know, I'm just gonna act like I know, but I'm just gonna continue with my life. You know, and then even with my Nicaraguan, but even like in Honduras, like for example, if we kind of like compare a little bit of like the north part, like for example, yo le llamo charamusca, a ella le llaman topollillo, y para mí topollillo es un ratón, you know. And it's like it's a whole dilemma, right? Like they call
Yeah, when I
it,
heard they don't say charamusca, I was like, "What?"
yeah, or like le llaman, you know, nosotros le llamamos mínimo, a ella le llaman guineo, and it's the whole like, of course, influence from other like you know, from the Central Americans, you know, like I know the guineo means something. It comes
Mm.
from like Africa. I don't know, remember the word or something like that. But then we call it mínimo, and I always tell my boyfriend was like, "Why you guys call it mínimo?" And I'm like, "You need to understand the history of of first of all of bananas in Central America because mínimo means that it didn't reach the size to be able to be
Yeah,
exported to another country." So
yeah,
we're just left with the whatever it
exactly.
didn't mean.
No, exactly. No, when I'm like when people are like, "Why do you call it mínimo?" I'm like, I want you to Google what banana republics are, and then you might stop judging. I was like, then you might stop judging.
Yes, yes, because it's like, you know, last time I told my mom, I'm like, oh, like I don't know, like it was, I don't know, I had like, you know, of course I had a like a banana, so like a mínimo, and then my mom was like, y es que dice mi mami, me caga que le estén diciendo plátano, esa cosa es un mínimo. I was like, because here some people call it plátano, and I'm like, this isn't a plátano. Plátano is something else y es para hacer tajaditas. This is not plátano. This is a, you know, mínimo banana, whatever you want to call it. But it's a whole difference for me for a mínimo. But you know, like it just
Yeah,
happens. You know, even in the same country, we tend to have different, you know, words displayed like that. And I tend to say like we just need to be understandable, and also be respectful. But there's some people that take it to the core, like, oh my god,
they
like it's
take it
whole
so
drama.
serious, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Como que el mundo se le va a acabar, como, oh my God, they're not saying it the same way I do. And it's like, there are so many, like 197
yeah.
countries around the world. Everybody talks different, so too.
No.
Yeah. So before we close, I just wanted to ask you a little bit. about, what would you say someone who might be considering kind of like starting a platform or like creating content in social media, what would be something that even you would tell them, or like what would you tell Anthony of like meses or years ago since you started, creating? What would be like un consejo que les darías?
I think to be like fully transparent, you have to have tough
Hmm.
skin. Like that's just like, especially if like you want to do it like, because with me, like I know some people like they do like they become like content creators because this is what they want to do for a living.
Hmm.
I do it because it's fun. Like, it's like a pastime. I'm in like school studying for like to be like, like I don't know what I want to do, but like I want to market myself using my social media. I'm like, hey, I know what I'm doing because look at this. Because I've been
Hmm.
doing social media since 2015. Like I used to be there on like Instagram when I was 14. So it's like I have developed such a thick skin from like years, so it's not easy because you'll be judged for literally everything you do. I'm not gonna say that they're like I've talked about the pros, of course, but like I want to start off with the cons so we end on a good note, you
Hmm.
know? Um, but like you'll definitely be judged for everything because like I've had comments where they're like, "Oh, like your hair looks different today." Like why like are you like scratching your nose? Like, "Oh, is that a booger?" And it's just like they people will notice any little like cada cosita. And I'm just like, "Wow." Like, I'm like, "Calm down," you know? Like for example, like I used to get comments all the time that it would be like, "How you wore that shirt last week?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because I have a washer and dryer at home." I'm like, I have a washer and dryer at home. So of course I'm gonna rewear the same shirts, you know? And la gente no entiende que algunos de nosotros somos pobres. Like, like, like they don't get that.
Hmm.
Like they don't understand that. Like some of us just don't want to buy more clothes because like I rewear the clothes that
Of
I have.
course, yeah.
But like I said, definitely a pro is like it's definitely use it to market yourself, like especially if you want a platform because I noticed that you cannot just rely on one platform. Like if you want to market yourself to like social media, you have to be able to do it on multiple different platforms. That's why like I started like I hated the idea of Twitter, but then I used Twitter for like a year and I'm already at like what 30,000 followers just literally just being myself. So it's like use other platforms and like I use Instagram too, but I'm mostly on like Twitter now. And then also like don't silence yourself for the appeal of the majority audience. Like that's the most important thing that I can say because there's some TikTokers who like make like this kind of content that appeal to people, but when I talk to them, I know that that's not the kind of content that they wish they made. That's just what's making them like the most money or getting them the most views. But I also
Hmm.
do think that you can make money like being yourself and like
Hmm.
because I'm not gonna say no es decir que no he ganado dinero, like I've definitely made money off TikTok, but like don't don't change what you want or like don't change like what you want to do based on like oh what's going to get you the most views because like then people can tell, like if I for all of a sudden like change my platform to like only informational videos, people would be like what happened to you,
Hmm.
or if I like just change my content to just like funny videos, people would be like I thought you were here to like educate us, and it's just like
Hmm.
people can tell like authenticity even through its a screen. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that's honestly a good note that, of course, don't try to, just appeal to the main audience. Be yourself and create the content that you wish so that you wish you would had or you wish to watch. Be the person to kind of take the step and create that content. And eventually, like I said, it will make you money, it would take you somewhere else, someone will see you, and it goes from there. I feel that social media es como un arma de doble filo, but definitely in cases it does help you a lot, like you said, to market yourself and to reach those individuals that might not be kind of like, especially con TikTok, like that puts like the video with so many people. It's like, you get to reach those audience that maybe it wasn't as easy to get reached before. So definitely.
Mhm. And there's
Yeah.
also a lot of stuff that like people people can realize because I know a lot of people have even DM me like, oh, like how can I help like out like my community? It just I mean, no sé cómo decirlo, like it doesn't only have to be through social media. There's a lot of
Hmm.
ways like in person that you can help a lot. Like for example, I chose to for example, right now I'm the co-president of
Mhm.
an organization at my college called like Cafe, Central Americans for Empowerment.
Mhm.
And through that organization, we help out the community, we help out like all Latinos, but like especially Central Americans. Um, so there's like a lot of ways, and like just like look up like what you can do around like even in like my like college town, there's Sin Barreras, there's like Creciendo Juntos, there's like all these like grassroots organizations that like you can help
Mhm.
out like the community. Like obviously, like if you want to help up higher up, you can do that, but like you can always start in your own community. It doesn't always have to be like on social media, because I think social media is important to reach other audiences like that are not near you, but
Mhm.
it's also important to kind of like uplift like your own community
Yeah.
before trying to like help out
Mhm.
people. I mean, you can always help out people, but you know what I
Yeah, I know.
mean.
No, but I want to say thank you, Anthony, for coming here. Thank you for having un poquito de tu tiempo and share your knowledge. And it was amazing talking with you. But I want to give you a space to share a little bit of your social media where people can find you. As always, everybody knows everybody will be linked down below. Your TikTok, your Instagram, your Twitter, and anything you would like to share. It'll be linked down below. That way, you guys can go and follow Anthony and yeah.
I want to say thank you for having me. This was so fun. But before I share some of my social medias, do you think I could have a second to like promote other Central
Yeah,
American
yeah. Go
TikTokers?
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead. Go ahead. You
because
have the
I
time.
feel like it's important. I feel like it's important for like other people. So like I make it a point to like kind of like become mutuals with other Central American
Mhm.
TikTokers. So there's like people like like Yacy, who's from like New York City. She's got Ifuna JEYBENZ. That's JC. She makes Honduran content. She's Hondureña. There's Tali, which is TALLY dot DILBERT. She's from San Antonio. These are all over the United States. So like follow as a. She makes like Caribbean content. She's from La Isla Bahías. There's Cielito, who holds a special place in my heart because she has gone through a lot because she's a Korean Salvadoreña. So
Yes.
it's like Cielito with like two T's and a one at the end. She's from Austin. Cut Creaser. I feel like a lot of people know her. She makes makeup videos. Her name's Vanessa. There's Drea. Andrea has a special place in my heart because she discusses Mexican hegemony a lot, and she's gotten a lot of like backlash towards it.
Mhm.
So she's like DRE, two A's and then the B. And then Anika, of course, everyone knows Anika. She's Panameña. And then the Mighty Z with a zero at the end. She's Beliceña, and she makes content about Black female and Black girl comic book representation and stuff like that. And I feel
Mhm.
like everyone should be following Colectiva, with an X at
Mhm.
the end. That account is very important because a lot of people will come to me to talk about like Afro Latinos, but I can only do so much because I don't live that experience. So I feel like an
Mhm.
account like Afro Colectiva is very important. But yeah, my social medias are Instagram is like I Tony Vara, TikTok is Vara Tony, and this
Mhm.
is all phonetic, so it's spelled how it sounds. And
Mhm.
my Twitter, my Twitter is Catrussi. It means catracho,
Yeah.
put together. So
Uh-huh.
it's Catrussi. So that's my Twitter. But yeah,
Okay.
thank you again for having me.
No, of course. Thank you, and for everyone, all the TikTokers and like content creator people that just share. I'm gonna tag them, and of course yours, and I'm gonna put them in for everyone to reach out. And just to before this episode, Andrea's episode is coming out. So it's before your
Oh,
episode.
Andrea's doing it too.
Yeah, yeah, I interviewed her like I
Uh,
think last week. Yeah, so before this episode, Andrea's gonna be here, and then I'm already planning an episode with Dali. So we're hoping
mm,
to bring all the TikTokers to talk a little bit about that, because I love TikTok. It's like my way to kind of relax, and like seeing you guys there is like es como un amor. Like it's just like my happy place over there.
yeah.
So I just want to say to everyone, thank you again, Anthony. Thank you. Continue doing what you're doing. If someone no te ha dicho de verdad, like we're proud of you. Anything, honestly means a lot. If someone didn't tell you before, it means a lot to the community. Thank you for creating the content, and thank you again. But yeah, anything else that you want to share?
No, I think that's it. But thank you again for having me. Thank you for those words. They do mean a lot, especially hearing
Oh,
that in person and not just like through comments. But Oh, like in person, you know what I mean,
Yes, yes, I know. uh,
but yeah, but thank
yeah,
you so much.
of course.